Thank you for joining us today. We have Allie Hall on the line. She's going to be presenting motivational interviewing.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and welcome everyone today for our brief conversation about motivational interviewing. I'm a member of the Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers, or MINT. MI is a method of communication skills developed by Drs. William Miller and Stephen Rolnick, and I appreciate all the great work that you do, and welcome today for our brief conversation about motivational interviewing. Just a brief background about motivational interviewing. Early in the 80s, Dr. Miller noticing that clients tend to revert all the more strongly to difficult or challenging behaviors when confronted. Also noticing that clients, when they receive the expression of accurate empathy and feel understood and accepted, were more likely to embrace changes immediately and be able to sustain those changes over time. It developed motivational interviewing as a contrast in particular to confrontational counseling. A couple of texts later, we're preparing now for a third edition of motivational interviewing to be released later in 2012. And certainly MI, while initiated with substance use and alcohol challenged clients in New Mexico, particularly with Native American populations, the applications were immediately apparent that success would be had in healthcare as well as mental health, and additional texts have been written in those areas. And certainly anywhere where people have trouble or challenges around change, motivational conversations are helpful in terms of initiating and sustaining change through the development and enhancement of readiness to make changes. Our current working definition of motivational interviewing is that it is a collaborative, person-centered form of guiding to elicit and strengthen motivation for change. And really there are some assumptions embedded within this that come from humanistic and existential psychologies, that people are really capable of change. We all as human beings are capable of change and are directed towards change at any time. Even if it's not evident on the surface in terms of our actions, we may be doing things that seem to be against our own best interest, even though we know better. To some extent, our awareness of what might be good for us may be challenged. But in any case, where there are within each human being is a capability for change, and as practitioners and caregivers and those that help the caregivers, we hold hopefulness for people's ability to make changes. So in essence, it is a collaborative or a partnership-oriented conversation, one that asks us and invites us to always develop a working alliance towards change, as though we're sitting on the same side of the table, keeping the person and their expertise first and foremost in our minds. Our conversation takes the form of guiding. We want to draw out and strengthen the motivation that exists within. It's as though each person has a pilot light inside, and our job is to help them find it and make it stronger. This is in contrast to thinking that it's our responsibility to install pilot lights or to provide motivation for people. Really it is to help them find that which is already inside. Just a brief overview of what we hope to accomplish today in our short time together, to look at motivational interviewing and its utility, as well as to contrast two conversational examples. And we have a volunteer who's willing to contrast those conversations with me today. And then moving into the structure of motivational interviewing, as well as a consideration of what complicates motivation. Ideally, at the end of this brief presentation and our time together, we will be able to identify the key ingredients of change, identify principles and spirit or style of motivational interviewing, to recognize ideal MI moments, and to select an MI response in a conversation, as well as to identify examples for ourselves of the righting reflex, or that well-intentioned human urge to make things better for others by supplying our expertise and information to them, in contrast to drawing out what they already know will work for them and collaborating for solutions. Moving briefly to a consideration of motivational interviewing and its utility, several things are true about MI, and sort of made our top 10 list here. It is a communication style that is, in essence, collaborative. Our focus will be on change, eliciting, strengthening, or drawing that intrinsic motivation for change from others rather than trying to persuade or provide reasons for the person to make change. We think about people talking themselves into the changes that they most desire. Centering on the person and honoring their autonomy, that really people make decisions every day, looking at what would work well for them, the changes that they most want, the choices that make most sense to them. Helping people make choices that are better or best for them in contrast to trying to control the decisions that others make. So that on point 5, our skills are really micro skills. They're a way that we express this sort of fundamental assumption about human beings, the way that we view people and the way that we choose to work with people. The goals we have might be more global and broad, but the skills we use are just small things. They're micro skills. We'll talk about those in a little while. When we're having motivational conversations, we're goal-oriented and specific. The purpose is around change, and our conversations are guided by that. Guided particularly by the patient or the other's conversation. We're looking for particular things that the person is saying. We're hoping to emphasize those that favor movement towards change. So that our conversations are brief and amenable to either short contact sessions, 1 or 2, or a limited number of interviews or contact sessions together, short conversations, and maybe linked over time. Adaptable to all settings where we find people have difficulties around change, and definitely learnable with observable skills that can be measured. When we think about MI as conversation, we're talking about engaging, listening, and responding, working together towards a goal, allowing the other to determine the pathway for adapting their behaviors, and also through collaboration, inviting ourselves to the table in an evocative and autonomy supportive way to help others to consider what might be helpful, so that we do get to bring our expertise forward, but there's a particular way in which we do that. We're going to look for certain MI moments and work to facilitate those. And we might include short conversations over a longer phase or period of time, a cumulative conversation, which, as I realize I've been using the words interchangeably, MI as conversation, as well as motivational interviewing. Dr. Miller, who principally has described motivational interviewing and its fundamental components, is sorry that he called it that. He wished he'd called it motivational conversation. It's a little too late now to back up. It's called MI, and that's the way it is. But he wished he'd called it conversation, because it really is two people talking about change. Even if you took the word interview, though, and you inserted a hyphen somewhere in there, like inter-view, it would be together to look at things. And this is really what we ask of ourselves as we sit and talk with someone about change, is we really look at things from that person's point of view and demonstrate through listening and understanding our non-judgmental acceptance of where the person is at, which facilitates self-acceptance, which then facilitates self-exploration and change. Briefly, to summarize years of research in motivational interviewing into several practical points, titled this slide for us, Practically Speaking. Research tells us that telling people how to solve their problems, even if we are well-intentioned, creates resistance to us and makes the person less likely to move towards change. And this resistance or interpersonal discord is really a product between something that happens between us and the person. So it's an actual product, something that we can create or minimize, rather than being a way of pathologizing the client or describing the client or the patient or the other person in the conversation. It really is something that is created between us and the other, and something that we can certainly influence in terms of either increasing or decreasing. The most effective way to help others change is to help them resolve their ambivalence. That people really feel two or more ways about something, or they would be ready to make the change that might be in front of them, but they certainly feel torn. And our goal in motivational interviewing is to help them explore a bit and to make a decision that is that favors movement towards change as they think about resolving their ambivalence in favor of change. Direct confrontation and persuasion are among the least effective things we can do to help others change. And this is all the more challenging when we feel frustrated or impatient or judgmental towards others, or even questioning or uncertain of their decisions. And ideally we take a step back and we find a way to collaborate and work with them towards the change. And last but not least, one of the most helpful things we can do to support autonomy and increase the likelihood of the other's change is to emphasize their choice over their behaviors and decisions. When we think about a special place for MI, if a person has a set plan that's working for them and they're committed to it, there really is no need for a motivational conversation. I mean, we could certainly affirm and reflect. We can remain person-centered, but if there is no particular uncertainty or absence of readiness for change, it wouldn't make sense to think within this MI model especially. Our second point, that MI is helpful where there is a need for information sharing when the person is not following a plan that they've set for themselves or seems unclear or uncertain about what to do. So we focus our efforts on where the person is regarding the ingredients for making change. We will think about MI moments and invite us to come back to it in just a moment. To review again a little bit of the research around MI, some of the reasons that have been demonstrated for practicing MI is across all behavior changes, MI has been shown to work. Much of it is about welcoming, and welcoming is something that's relatively easy and straightforward for us to do. It really is about talking with others. When the money is gone and the programs are gone, all we have left is how we talk with each other. So in this sense, it doesn't cost much. It's not about building buildings or constructing anything in particular. It really is two people talking. The small things we do make a very big difference because we get out of the way of the other's change and do things very specifically to guide and strengthen the person's motivation and readiness towards the change. What we've noticed, too, is that the opposite approach for confrontational counseling tends to have very poor results, creates defense of the status quo and interpersonal discord and emotional reactance to us in the conversation. The last thing we want to do keeps people stuck in present behaviors, defensive and pushing back against us as well. Fits well with other treatment interventions and certainly makes our jobs easier and more enjoyable. Thinking about a few other elements of research support for MI, robust and enduring effects are demonstrated when MI is added at the beginning of exchanges, increases things that we really love to see in terms of working with people, that there's retention and engagement, as well as adherence to regimens that are good for people. And what we perceive as motivation, certainly people who appear more motivated on the surface are always much more enjoyable to work with. So this accounts, too, for making our jobs easier and more enjoyable, reducing our stress, cortisol, and blood pressure in the meantime. The effects of MI tend to emerge very quickly and will diminish over time, except where you add skills. It would make sense, really, if MI is designed and has been shown to raise readiness for change, that once readiness has been raised to use skills, that we would have other skills to add. Clearly, if we raise readiness and don't have other skills-based ways of working with people, you would imagine that motivation would diminish, and that's what happens. So here we have a few numbers about mean combined effect sizes by different problem areas or challenges that people face. When you look at the single behaviors, things like HIV risk, gambling, or even substance use or alcohol, what you notice is that the results emerge very, very quickly and stay strong Not bad, certainly far outperforming treatment as usual, even 12 months and beyond. Some of the single behaviors are around risk reduction or prevention rather than promotion. So that when you take these contexts such as treatment adherence or diet and exercise, where you have fabric of life changes, certainly when we think of diet and exercise, we think of increasing physical activity, thinking about what we eat, when we eat, how we eat. Some of those changes are harder to see at the outset, but they're health promotion behaviors. And so over time the behaviors put together tend to increase the effectiveness as people become more committed and adhere to those changes over time. So what's really exciting news for us in terms of supporting caregivers is that people, once they decide what's good for them, tend to increase in their commitment and results that they see over time. Those are promotion behaviors, self-care promotion behaviors, in contrast to preventing bad things from happening. Our attention and motivation to preventing bad things from happening tends to wane over time, whereas we increase our motivation and our adherence behaviors when we're moving towards something positive, especially in fabric of life kinds of ways. When we think about an MI moment, we talked about those particular opportunities for MI. There really is a point in time when either the other person or ourselves, some of these things will apply. When our client seems uncertain, ambivalent, or not yet ready for a decision, perfect opportunity for MI. For ourselves, if we know a certain discussion needs to be had or that information might be shared or it would be useful to have a conversation, and yet another time for an MI moment, and also the situation where people directly seek our advice or assistance, yet another ideal time for a motivational conversation, in part because we want to raise people's readiness for change, and we know that directly advising them might actually tend to decrease their motivation or might produce reactance against us. So we're going to think of each of these three moments as a time for motivational interviewing, where we use our micro skills from this point of view about people having the internal capacity to change and offering our information or advice only once we know everything the person already knows is going to work for them, their ideas and their options for themselves, and asking permission before we offer information. Thinking about our 4 principles of MI and our underlying MI spirit, our goal and our purpose in our conversation very often is to express empathy. Probably the single most important and helpful thing we can do is to really understand the reality, the other person's perspective. The other day I was talking with a woman who works in healthcare who said she understood the client's goal, the patient's goal, but she didn't hear the patient's story. And what she was talking about was an absence of empathy for that person's perspective and the reality of her situation, that if she had it to do over again, she would have made that the highest priority. Also with our skills, we're thinking too of developing discrepancy, focusing on where a person is and where they might like to be, as well as how we can help them get there. In terms of rolling with resistance or diminishing discord, we avoid pushing for change, ordering, warning, or confronting. We make an effort not to provide information prematurely or without permission. And also supporting self-efficacy to help others find ways to be successful that will work for them, helping them identify skills and abilities to help them make the change. In thinking about the MI spirit and the conversation we could have about it, we're really looking to emphasize and convey a desire to do several things with our patient or our caregiver or our person. We're thinking about conveying this desire to collaborate, to work together in a non-authoritarian and in a partnering style, working together rather than against, rather than at odds, so on the same side of the ball or the same side of the table as a team towards change. Thinking too about evoking, drawing out what's important to the other, their needs and ideas, making no assumptions, and viewing the other as the expert in their life. Looking, too, to support autonomy, recognizing that people make decisions and will exercise choice. So we always endeavor to support and affirm personal responsibility, emphasize control and choice, and help the person identify options that will work best for them. In contrasting our styles, on the left we have our elements of MI style or spirit, again, conveying the desire to collaborate, to draw forth from the other, and to support their ability to make choices that are right for them. The contrasting style, on the right side there, is really about confronting, sort of standing in the way or trying to define how the person should make the change. Education, not a bad word in and of itself, but the root is to instill or install, which is the opposite of evoking, which is to draw forth. Evocation suggests that the person has water in the well, and it's our responsibility in working with them for change to bring those resources forward. The root of the word education is to assume the person needs to have our advice or expertise installed in them, so to put in rather than to draw forward. So education, in the way we're using it here, is to assume that the well is empty and our job is to put the water in. Similarly, in terms of asserting authority over others' choices and changes, to prescribe the way that they should go about it, to limit options, and to do our best to control the choices that they make, tends to raise resistance to change, particularly when people are not ready. To take a moment to identify specifically these elements in two contrasting conversations, I've invited Gail, who's been very willing to help out here in this, to have two different conversations with me today. One is a less MI inherent conversation, really based in that style of confronting, educating, and trying to assert authority over her decisions. And then a second conversation, which will emphasize MI spirit in terms of collaborating, finding a way to partner together, to draw out her insights and her options for herself, as well as to help her take responsibility for the choices that feel right for her. So really want to thank you, Gail, for being willing today, and invite you to come forward for these two conversation examples, and perhaps we can start the first now.
Okay. I'm glad to do it, Allie.
Thank you. You're very kind. Well, so Gail, if we could take a couple of minutes now, how have things been going with him?
Well, not so good. He's the one with dementia, but I think I'm the one that's having the cognitive difficulties. I just never seem to know what's going to happen next, and I try to put things in place to address one problem, and then it's another problem that surfaces, and it's just not the same person I'm dealing with from time to time, and I'm really struggling. I'm beginning to lose sleep, and I'm having a lot of problems with it.
Wow, that sounds tough. You sound really burned out, and probably if you keep on, at the pace you're at, you're going to fall apart, and then what good will you be to anyone?
I know, that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah, you really do sound burned out, and now you're starting to lose sleep, and it's a really difficult situation. Probably a vacation is the best thing you could do, and I think waiting another minute would be a bad idea, considering how stressed you sound today.
God, I wish I could take a vacation, but I just don't. There's just work piling up on my desk, and, I'm having a harder time concentrating on things here, so a vacation would really be out of the question right this minute.
Well, and that might be. It's just that if you fall apart, then what? Then what would he do? You're taking care of both of you right now, and if you don't step away, things could get just worse and worse and worse. When you're having trouble concentrating, usually the best thing to do is get up right then, get refreshed, go take a walk, get some water, get some air, maybe take the rest of the day off. You're at this rate, you're just going to burn yourself right into the ground.
Yeah, I know you're right, but I just cannot do that. And I keep saying I have to take care of myself. That's what my brain says. But then there's another problem right there, and there's nothing I can do about it. I just have to address it.
You know, you're right. Taking care of yourself is really the only option here. I mean, really, what's going to happen if you fall apart?
I don't know. I just
yeah.
don't know. And
well, that's the thing. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't feel like I have any viable options. I just, all I can do is go from minute to minute and hold on tight.
Well, you know, maybe, but at this rate, I don't know what you're going to have left. I mean, probably if you don't step away pretty soon, you'll be no good to either of you.
Well, maybe I'll win the lottery.
Oh, you know, we can always hope. I think you just standing ground and taking the time, getting somebody else to come in and help for a while, you know, hand it off for a while, you know, then maybe you can come back refreshed. You know, take a week or so, step away, come back refreshed. That's probably your best.
I hear you, Allie, but that's just not an option for me. And I seem to be the only person that he will listen to and be comfortable with.
Oh, he's
so
going to have to.
Hiring help in isn't working. I can't take time off from work.
Well,
I'm just in a mess.
Maybe you can hire a couple people because, you know, really, if he won't listen to one, maybe he'll listen to the other, and at least there'll be two of them there. But boy, you know, you've really just got to take some time. I'm worried about you.
Well, I appreciate that, but that's not helpful, Allie.
Well, Gail, I wonder if we could pause for a moment, and I appreciate you being willing to talk in this way. I wonder if we could sort of shake ourselves off and shift gears, and let's try this a different way.
Okay.
Thank you. Please stand by.
I wonder if we might try a different way of working together about this.
Okay.
Okay. Gail, I was kind of just wondering how things are going with taking care of Tom. How are things going for you?
Well, they're just very challenging. I'm kind of at a crossroads, or really I'm at a brick wall, because I feel like you know, Tom has always been compliant and very easygoing, and now he's just dug his heels in and is refusing the help that I feel very strongly he needs.
You're really swimming upstream these days about this.
I'm sorry?
You're really swimming upstream these days about this.
Yes. Yes. And it causes me a great deal of concern.
And it's really starting to take a toll on you.
Yes, it is. It really is.
Yeah. Well, what do you see are your options? What would make sense? What would be supportive or helpful to you?
You know, I'm really not sure. I think that probably being able to step back and kind of get a better understanding of what is in my control and what is not.
Mm-hmm.
And
in the past, when you've been successful at something like that, at standing back and taking a look at things, what's been most useful for you?
Well, it's the ability to really spend some time alone in a peaceful setting.
Mm-hmm. Getting quiet about it might really help at this time.
Yeah, finding that peaceful spot, which is really hard to find these days. You know, we're all so busy, and I don't want to sound like I'm any more stressed than anybody else, but it's very difficult to find that peaceful spot.
Mm-hmm. Things are spinning so fast all the time; it's hard to really get quiet and to know what's best.
Yeah, and it really takes that to get down to the depth that I need to get to figure this thing out, because it has me befuddled, I've got to tell you.
So something that might help you figure out what's best for you is to really find a moment of peace.
Yeah, I think that I'm going to have to.
Yeah, it sounds pretty urgent for you right now.
Mm-hmm.
When would you see being able to do that? How would you carve that out?
Well, you know, I have a couple of days vacation coming up, that I'm going to take my nephew, my 7-year-old nephew, to the beach.
Mm.
And now it's hard to imagine having a peaceful moment, but I certainly will have a joyful moment.
Sure.
So,
it's something that recharges your batteries, and you might be able to find a few quiet moments even within that.
And maybe if he spends enough time on that slide in the water park, he'll fall asleep, and I'll have a peaceful moment. But that is
right.
That's something that now that you make me stop and think about it, I realize I do have something very pleasant to look forward to, and that gives me that kind of lifts my spirits.
Mm-hmm. Maybe not a 100% restful moment, but certainly something that's different and might provide just the opportunity you need to take that time for yourself, which it sounds, from your point of view, is really vital to you, knowing what's best.
Yeah, kind of getting back to basics so that I can see things from a different angle, not quite a arid angle.
Be able to focus on what really matters most to you. Yeah.
Exactly. And certainly spending time with my nephew is right at the top of that list.
Yeah. It sounds like a perfect opportunity, and it's great that you have that insight to know what's going to work well for you, and that it's coming up soon, and maybe might be just the thing that's needed. Well, Gail, thanks again for being willing to talk about this, and certainly these are briefer than even a brief MI conversation, but I don't know what your experience was of the two different styles of talking.
Well, I'll share it with you. The first one, I felt, it was good. There were good suggestions, but they were pushed.
Yeah.
Whereas the other one I felt relaxed as we were speaking, whereas before I felt like
pressure on you.
I had that relaxation in me.
Mm-hmm.
So I really could feel the difference of the that surrounded the process.
Mm-hmm. Despite the well-intended desire that the interviewer had in the first example to really get you to take care of yourself, it actually was adding more stress to the situation.
Well, I felt like I had to defend the reasons why I was not following that advice.
Right. All the reasons.
And we do that so many times in working with caregivers. Is that, well, you just need to take time off.
We mean well.
The other way was really much more effective.
Yeah. And in the second, you had all of these ideas that really came from you that no one could have known that were true about you and your life. Yeah.
Yeah, it felt much better.
Okay. Well, good. I'm glad it did, and it's I think we mean so well when we urge things on people. We're certainly not trying to harm others. It certainly does have the effect of adding a pressure and even pushing them, talking themselves out of a change that might be in their own best interest.
And when you first, in the second version, when you said you put it on me to stop and reflect and come up with a solution, or a recommendation, it really did force me to stop and think differently about it. It came from a different place.
A solution that really came from you rather than being imposed on you from something else. And ideally, and I'm hoping it's the case that in the second example you felt heard and understood and appreciated for the challenges that you're facing, in contrast to just, the just do it kind of talk that we had in the first place.
Yeah, I did. I really did.
Well, good. And thanks for being willing to talk. In any case, a very different style. One certainly, the advising, telling, confronting, presenting an option, insisting on an option, in contrast to really helping the person we're working with come up with options that make sense to them, for the reasons that make sense to them, and in a way that they could carry out that makes sense to them. Well, thank you for being willing to talk. When we're talking with people about change, there are certain things that we want to hear. We want to hear certain words that people people talk in these ways spontaneously. We want to increase the likelihood in our conversations that people talk in these ways, in part because it favors movement towards change. And we have our handy acronym, the darn CAT. In terms of change, people need to talk a lot of darn before they can talk any cat. When they begin to talk cat, they're really beginning to move themselves into readiness towards change. Darn talk, though, is very predictive that you can begin talking cat. You certainly want to have a lot of darn going around in the conversation. The sort of conversation you want to create and the opportunities you want to have people talk about are what they want most to do, their desire for the change, their ability to make the change. And Gail was talking about this also in our second conversation example. She was talking about what she wanted. She had a desire for things to be different or more manageable for her. She had abilities that were coming forward. She was talking about the ways in which she was capable. And she listed some reasons that it would be beneficial for her to take the time out. There was a certain sense of need or urgency. Sometimes this alone promotes change for us. We know what we need to do. We may not feel always able, or we may not want to do it, but we're often very much in touch with what we need to do as well as the reasons for the change. So we may have some of these pieces going for us. We want to try to get as many of these pieces going as possible in the conversation in order to predict movement towards change. And once we have enough darn, we can really begin to ask the person we're working with for a little bit of cat. And this might be a small cat to start out with, but when the cat gets really fully developed, that's when we see that people move into making changes that are valuable to them. The kinds of things we desire to hear from people in our conversations around change, we want to hear commitment, what the person will do, what they feel that they are able to put into motion, how ready they are to make the change, and the steps that they might consider taking, as well as a time frame. A goal is just really a dream with a deadline, and when people begin to talk about what they most want, what they most cherish, what they feel able to do, the steps that they'll take, we want it to sort of start into motion in some reasonable and in almost immediate time frame. At least some steps, even if the person isn't willing to undertake the change immediately, some thinking about steps or some hypothetical steps. If you were to begin taking time for yourself, when might you get started on that? Or if you were to be able to consider taking time for yourself, what are the ways you would do that, and when might you get started? Even hypothetical steps and a hypothetical timeline is preferable to having people visualize and begin to manage the change and bring it into reality for themselves. Again, we need a lot of darn to get cat, and we need a lot of cat in order to see action on the surface. So anything we do in our conversations to create darn, to create cat, and to support those things in terms of moving towards behavior change bodes well for the person's ability to move from the difficult position of things being the same or things being not entirely satisfying to things being more satisfying. When we think of an MI flowchart, we think about the skills that we use, OARS being our open questions and affirmations and reflections and summaries. If this darn cat erupts naturally without our explicit elicitation of it, then we can respond to strengthen the darn into cat and develop a plan. If, though, change talk is challenged, if there's sort of not all the pieces of darn are there for us in our conversations, or if darn isn't flowing into cat, there's certainly some things that we do to create conversations that are more likely to help people move towards change. We have another handy, clunky acronym, the I2LEDGE, but what this really means for people is the I being a strategy of scaling around importance and confidence for the change, the Q being for querying extremes, what's the best case scenario, what's the worst case scenario, the L for looking forward and looking back to a time when you feel you were able to manage this well, what was going well for you, what were you doing well, looking ahead to a time, what would you like to see different in a week, 2 weeks, a year. So L is for looking forward, looking back. The E for evocative questions, which we'll see on the next slide. D is for decisional balance, or weighing the pros and cons of the change. G being for goals and values, sort of a goals and values exploration, finding out what really makes people tick and helping them move towards that being a reality more often in their lives. And then the last E, up there at about 11 o'clock on our scale here, our little circle, the E being for elaboration types of questions. When we hear a little bit of the darn or the cat, we reinforce it and ask for some more. But these are some of the magic questions that will help us create the climate where movement towards change will take place. For example, the upper left, for what are you most motivated, what change do you most want? That usually gets us some desire talk from those we're working with. The bottom left gets us ability talk. In what ways are you able to make the changes? We might ask what skills and strengths do you have to undertake this change. The upper right, the reasons or the benefits for the change. And in the center, the scale or this idea of need or urgency to the change. How vital is this? How willing are you? How important is it for you to change? And in the bottom right, the cat types of questions. What steps are you willing to take? How would you go about doing it? Others might have ideas for you. You'd be the one who's best to decide what options make sense for you. When things are going well, what are you doing? When things are not going as well, what's happening? So these kinds of things are cat sorts of questions. When we think about a motivational conversation, we have a few skills to use. We have open questions, which helps us elicit a client's reality, to gain knowledge and understanding of their situation, and to begin an exploration of that with them. We often seek to affirm, to acknowledge, strengthen, value the abilities that we see people using, as well as the person themselves, and validating and supporting those things. Reflective listening, our reflections are our single most important skills to use reflective listening skills in motivational interviewing, in part because we're able to help the person hear themselves. We demonstrate to the person that we're able to hear them and that we value them and we're appreciating what they're saying in a non-judgmental and accepting and compassionate way. And then summarizing periodically to guide the conversation, sort of prune things and collect things in such a way as sort of a larger reflection. Summary function as a larger reflection in our conversations with others. Our focus on reflection, many reasons to do this. It's the single most powerful way to express empathy, and empathy alone is the most predictive factor whether people experience our empathy. People are more apt to change and sustain those changes in response to the expression of empathy. There's also some thought that the expression of empathy heals the person offering it as well as the person receiving it. Anyway, reflective listening allows us to clarify what we're talking about, invites the person to respond and set the direction, and it is shown to generate more darn cat even than open questions. It also keeps us getting caught in a series of questions. It shifts the balance to collaboration from being the one in charge. So we're much more person-centered when we are offering reflections in response to other conversations we're having. One of the reasons people have difficulties making change, perhaps they haven't had an opportunity to clarify the importance of the change to them. They may have low confidence to undertake the change, or they may not be ready or have conflicting priorities. So a person might say, I want to stop smoking more than anything on earth, but I don't see how I can. That would be somebody who's strong in importance but low in confidence. Someone might also say, I could stop anytime I want to, but I don't want to. That's someone who's strong in confidence and low in importance for the change. Somebody might be both willing and able but not be ready because of conflicting priorities. Something that I'd like to do, I know I can do it, but not today. I tell you what, I got 10 other things to do. That is also a readiness issue, but coming out of conflicting priorities. So all of the reasons that people might have trouble moving towards change, all very humanly understandable reasons that stand in the way of change, but certainly in order to be ready to undertake changes, we have to work with a person to raise for them and within them both the willingness and the ability, and then work out the conflicting priorities when it comes to readiness. So sort of beyond the scope of what we can do today, but just to foreshadow, all of what we do in MI is around raising readiness for the person to make a decision and undertake the change successfully for themselves. Importance, certain challenges arise around importance, and certainly challenges arise around confidence. And certainly people who have tried many times and feel that they have failed, certainly in MI we view those as success attempts towards change, but people often feel discouraged around what they see as having tried so many times. The person who's tried so many times and is discouraged is a person whose importance for the change is very strong. So in part that's good news. It must be so important that they keep trying despite the discouragement. Just a brief explication of flow of a conversation in motivational interviewing, certainly setting a person-centered agenda, starting with an open question, finding out where someone is at, simply listening and reflecting back, responding if information is needed. We elicit current knowledge and then ask for permission to share what we know, check for understanding, and so on. In terms of agenda setting, we might have an array of things to suggest. These are things that people often like to talk about when they consider making changes in their lives. I don't know if any of these things are interesting to you. There certainly are some blank circles for you to fill in something if an agenda to talk today would be more desirable for you, if you don't see something represented. So even agenda setting is a person-centered collaborative exercise, and this is an example of an agenda setting form. Something that complicates motivation is our natural human desire to make it better for another person. Certain things we can do to stand in the way of change, and trying to fix, advise, order, warn, tell, and make it better for another person, however well-intentioned, can often stand in the way. When we do that, when we realize we're getting argument and pushback against the change the person might actually want for themselves, we can always stop and reset. Mrs. Smith, I realize I've just been lecturing you on how to manage your diabetes without asking you how you're doing. Let me back up and hear from you. Where would you like to start? How do you see us working together? What would be helpful for you? What are the options that would make sense for you? So just, if we find ourselves trying to fix, we can always step back and restart. So briefly, with motivational interviewing, we can do many things. Focus our conversation, share information, be practical, supportive partner in change, not pushing the person and certainly not judging, but finding what changes are most desirable and what options make sense for the person to put that into practice for themselves. We have an opportunity now to look at, at some point I'm going to be not talking anymore and allow an opportunity for questions and discussion among us, and I really appreciate you all sticking with us for the conversation today. I'd like to hear some of your thoughts as well as any questions or clarifications that we might need, and then I believe there will be a post-test. Certainly all the information you need to score perfectly on the post-test has already been discussed today. So anyway, a brief whirlwind tour of motivational interviewing.
Hi, Allie. You did such a wonderful job. Now we're going to unmute the phones now for questions.
Okay.
The conference has been unmuted.
Okay, do we have any questions out there? Silence. I particularly enjoyed the part, just given the mindset, changing the mindset of how to listen to your caregiver and engage with them and go with what they really are desiring to change. I thought that was great, Allie.
Oh, good, good. I'm glad. Yeah, that's why we want to find the heart in there. What do you most want?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if the audience would prefer to chat online. If they want to start, they can email you the questions as well at the bottom.
Okay, I'll ask from the full screen then.
Okay. at the close of the conference today, we will stop the meeting, but we'll have the audio on, and immediately you will get a survey that you can respond to, and that you need to respond to, because when you respond to the post-test, I will get the results, I will grade the post-test, and then I will send out certificates to all those who completed 70% or more. Okay. I'm not seeing any questions. Is there anyone out there that would like to ask Allie anything?
I see a question, will we be able to get a copy of the presentation?
It will be archived. Is that Allie that asked me?
It is. I'm just reading the chat.
Okay.
You might want to explain archived.
Okay. Well, we are going to record it, and we will have a link sent out to you where you can view it again. You'll be able to view it from your computer, and I will send you an email with a connection to the training.
And I have to apologize. My 17-pound dachshund just decided to chime in. Background. He has been absolutely quiet to this point. Now he's decided he has to have something to say too.
You were probably feeding him doggy biscuits the entire presentation.
No, he just had the longest walk, and he was relaxing in his chair with his blanket, and now he has something to say.
And Allie, you might see the comment from Cheryl Armour about what she finds helpful about this technique.
Yeah, that's a great comment, Cheryl. That's a great insight that you have. Yeah, really finding out, and it feels it's great to remember to do that. I'm glad you have insight.
And Allie, I'll be using this technique this afternoon with my mother as we investigate how we'll move forward with her caregiving situation.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We've certainly done a lot of work in MI with helping people make decisions that are really still available for them to make, and also in our ability to share with them the concerns that we have that feel autonomy supportive and respect. I know that this is a concern for you. If it's okay with you, I'd like to share a concern that I have for you.
Okay.
Those kinds of things are often ways that we can talk with those whose autonomy is really important to them, and we certainly want to respect it to the largest extent we can.
Yeah, and that's a struggle. Also asking about long-term financial assistance for caregivers. I don't know, is anybody on the call that might have that information or some insight into that?
The only encouragement I have is that the Obama administration is recognizing the challenges of caregiving, and they're starting to put some funding in place. I don't know what that will mean, but I was encouraged that it's being recognized on the federal level.
Okay.
Questions? Do you have any suggestions on how to adapt this when doing case management, where you see clients every 3 or 4 months?
Good question. Yes, absolutely. That's a great question, and certainly, and depending, one thing might be finding out from people what will help them, what plan will help sustain them for that period of time, how they want to check in with themselves around it, how they see us working together in the future. Really sort of doing probably a little bit more change planning with people at each session, and then being able to check in about it. One particular thing about the difference between darn and cat for working with people on a long-term basis is often we hear darn from people. We hear what people want, what people think they can do, but we walk away without having asked them to taking between now and next time we talk. What are some ways that you would know that you're being successful achieving this that really matters to you? We first ask for the cat. When we do ask for the cat and we reinforce it, we're able to help the person formulate a plan that makes more sense to them and isn't just a matter of wishful thinking.
Dana Long has a question.
Helps people sustain in the long term.
I'm sorry. Dana Long has a question. Go ahead, Dana.
Yeah, this is Dana Long, and I have a lady who called over here, and we could tell when she was on the telephone that she wanted help. She said, caregiver for her husband, and she said, I need some help. What can y'all do for me? And the screener just she said, I want help now. I need help now. And the lady talking to her just told her, we can try to see what we have that will help you, but it's not an immediate process. We have different things we have to know about you and your situation, and trying to explain the whole process to her, but she was so on edge that she wouldn't even do the telephone interview. Said, I can tell you're not going to be able to help me, and just hung up the phone. Well, the screener came to me and told me, she said, I can tell this caregiver is just stressed out. She won't even let me ask her any questions. And her number, and I'll try to talk to her and see if I can, get an appointment or whatever. So in a few minutes, I called her back because we had caller ID. And when I got her on the phone, I said, I understand that you're having a hard time taking care of your husband, and we'd really like to see what we can do to help. And she said, ma'am, I'm trying to get dinner on the table. Would you call me back later? And we get through to this woman. So I don't know if she's too far gone, or if our approach is wrong. What in the world, or how are we going to get to this woman, or if we can?
That's a really good question, and that sounds challenging. I think just really reflecting and reflecting back the urgency, really showing that you understand that on the deepest level, that you hear the challenge in her voice, and possibly clarifying expectations. It sounds like your needs are so incredibly urgent. I'm not even sure what would be helpful for you at this point. I wonder if we could clarify what it is that you expect us to be able to do, and maybe we can something among your expectations that we can serve for you, and then maybe find some other options for you to address the things that maybe are beyond our capabilities. And even if help isn't immediately available, I understand you need this right now. If something were to be available in a couple of weeks after we're able to do an intake together, what are some things that you can do between now and then for yourself just to keep on the surface of the water? What are some things you can do to at least keep treading water until the help that it sounds like you most want is available for you? I think just helping people come up with options for themselves. There are going to be people that, there's situations that we can't resolve, or that are too escalated. Not even medication works for everybody 100% of the time, but certainly we find that at least 99% of the time our ability to clarify with people expectations and help them find solutions that are going to make sense to them, and also be able to reach the boundaries and the abilities that we have to serve them might be our best option. We're seeing a question, too, about whether options counselors need to take the post-test.
You asking me a question?
Yeah, I'm just seeing the chat.
What did it say?
Okay, whether options counselors need to take the post-test as well.
Well,
it says, yes, please.
Yes, you'll receive one contact hour from the Rosalind Carter Institute and get a certificate. And we just kind of like to see how the training went for you and the information that you receive.
And we do have, I am seeing some questions about people might have continued to arise, or because we did try to do so much in such a short period, there may have been some parts that went a little fast there. But anyway, my contact information is available on the presentation. If anyone has sort of additional questions or follow-up, we would welcome you all to let me know that.
Ellie, with your permission, I'd like to send out your slides.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So I'll send it out as people request.
Yes.
Okay.
And I just we do welcome people to contact if there are any additional questions.
Okay. Super. You did a great job, Ellie. I appreciate all the information. It was very helpful to what we do.
Wonderful talking with you all today, and I wish you the best with the important work that you do, making a very big difference in the lives of our caregivers.
I'm sorry, who do we request the slides from?
Lisa Bice, and it was on the email that went out.
Okay.
Any more questions? Okay.
Thank you all. It's been a great pleasure, and thank you, Lisa and Gail.
Okay. Remember to take your post-test as we close down the meeting. Thank you.
Who are you holding for? So I guess it won't do no good.
Do you want us to hang up now, or do we stay on? No, it was something we had to do
After we did post it.
Let me hang up.
What's she say? Business client.
Thank you. Please stand by.